Okay, everyone, welcome. This is the last lecture of this module. Oh, come on. I wasn't expecting a cheer, I was expecting a no! Oh, well, the good news is you've got another 6 lectures with Robert. I mean, no, sorry. And 4 with Claudia. Okay, what I want to do today is going to be nice and easy. I just want to do a recap, okay, literally. I want to just give you, the idea of this is just to give you some slides to take away with you, some key messages. So what are the key 3 or 4 points from every session that we did? What are the takeaway messages from this module? That's all we're going to do today. And at the end, I've got a couple of final words from some speakers on sustainable project management. We're going to hear from a couple of practitioners about their view of sustainable project management. Okay, so we'll deal with this first. So it's not going to be too heavy, not going to be too long, and then we'll talk about the assessment quickly. Okay, so if you remember way back when you first came here and you were all mad capitalists who knew nothing about the environment, ravaging the world in your private planes or whatever, we started to talk about defining sustainability and what it was, what it means, and what it is as a discipline. And as sorry, I was just distracted by the fantastic advert for Apple at the back there. The same here, all these products everywhere. Fantastic. Yeah. So sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet its own needs. So we started off with the World Commission for Environmental Development, the Brundtland definition of sustainability, if you remember. Then we also talked about what it meant for business, okay? So slightly different in a way, a little bit more specific in that for the business enterprise, sustainable development means adopting strategies and activities that meet the needs of the enterprise and its stakeholders today, while protecting, sustaining and enhancing the human and natural resources that will be needed in the future. And the key thing I think about this one here is, no matter what you hear, sustainability isn't just about, you know, looking after the environment, looking after people. You've got to make a profit as well. You're a project manager, okay? Unless you're working for a non-profit, you need to actually be economically viable in what you do. And there's nothing wrong with that, I would argue, as long as you do that with consideration to the environmental and social aspects of your project. So sustainable project managers, we're trying to harmonise our value, our profit, what our stakeholder needs, but at the same time in dealing with these other issues. So the key messages. Human well-being, development is inextricably linked with the natural environment. We cannot exist without our environment as people, as a species, so therefore we need to protect the environment in which we exist. Sustainability has these 3 dimensions, as I've told you about and asked you to deal with in your essay: environmental, social and economic. Possibly more dimensions than that, but generally speaking, we slot everything into these 3 here. So you remember that nice diagram I showed you, the onion of sustainability, the fried egg, some people call it, nestled sustainability. Business and the economy just simply cannot exist without society. The economy, projects, businesses are a construct of us as people, as a society, and we cannot exist outside the environment. So when defining sustainability as project managers in the businesses you go into, it's the context in which you define it which is more important than its wording, okay? So you need to understand how sustainability will be defined within your project. Key messages for sustainable development. It's okay, we're just waiting for you, thank you. Sorry. We touched on week 2, we looked at climate, global environmental issues. So what are some of the big problems that we face as people, as businesses, as project managers? And we looked at climate change, of course, being the biggie. We looked at loss of biodiversity, what that means for species, ecology, and the economy. If you remember, we talked about how many $1 trillion, I think it was, that was built into our economy and economic systems through the use of natural resources for medicine, for instance, and for cosmetics, etc. We looked at poverty and inequality and how that had an important determining factor on things like loss of biodiversity, environmental destruction. And so by improving global kind of prosperity, we can deal with these issues as well. And we touched on energy security. Where do we get our energy from? How can we be more energy independent, more resilient, making sure that we don't have to worry about energy supply in the future? Luckily, those of you in Europe who are working on projects, you'll be fine with that to a degree. If you go out and work in Nigeria, Pakistan, India, energy security for your specific project will be a big issue. Okay? How do you guarantee constant 24-hour supply of energy in order to do what you need to do? So energy security was an issue. Take-home messages here. Climate change is the most pressing issue facing the planet. Not one of them, it's the most pressing issue facing the planet at the moment. We talked a lot about the science and what the truth was about that, and some of the myths about that. We talked about how biological diversity is important for our well-being, and also to help kind of mitigate things like disasters and hazards, such as flooding and pollution, using the actual natural environment to stop landslides. Okay, we take trees off a mountainside, landslides, flooding and pollution. We understood that increasingly people in the developed as well as developing world are affected by increases in fuel and food prices. Big thing in the UK at the moment, our fuel prices, how much we are spending on our heating and energy costs, and probably all of us here are now classified as fuel poor under the fuel poverty banner, which says that if you spend more than 10% of your income on heating your home, you're in poverty. Probably all of us are actually in that now. It's so expensive now to home our homes. And also food prices. If you remember, the Arab Spring, as we call it in the UK. So the revolutions we've had in Tunisia, Egypt potentially, Syria, these all started with high food prices in Tunisia. That's where it came from. That's where the unrest started. Food prices linked to climate change, linked to loss of biodiversity. So it's all linked. We talked about energy security in more detail, issues arising from the insufficient secure energy supplies, threats to energy security from political instability of energy producing countries, competition over natural resources. So again, I think I mentioned in the case of Egypt and Sudan, and some worries there about potential water wars, as Egypt damming the Nile to try to provide more resources for its agriculture. And of course, if you're living in the Sudan, you've got less water flowing through the Nile, which means you've got less water for your infrastructure. So we're talking about issues there. And conflicts are increasingly rising over these natural resources. As a project manager, you need to have these in the back of your mind. You need to understand that there might be pressures on the resources that you need in order to run your project effectively, and try to mitigate that. Next, we talked a little bit about some of the language of sustainability. I tried to teach you a little bit about these words that you hear now. We looked at our own carbon footprints, carbon offsetting, emission trading, greenwash, the triple bottom line. You need to understand some of these words as a project manager, because you'll hear them. There's nothing worse than standing up and talking to people and they're talking to you, yes, we need to do an environmental life cycle assessment for this project, and you're thinking, what the are they on about? You need to understand the language of the business you're working in. So from a sustainability point of view, these, hopefully, you'll have now a basic understanding of what they mean. I'm not expecting you to be able to go out and do an environmental impact assessment on a nuclear power station, but I'm expecting you to understand what that means, why it's important, and when you would need to think about that. Key messages then. So for project managers, being conversant in your practice area is critical, not only in order to perform well, but to increase your credibility and to get good results. Your staff want to know you know what you're talking about. The discipline of sustainability and sustainable development has a large vocabulary and new concepts to understand. So we can't do that much in 10 weeks, but I'm hoping that you would have been able to understand some of these sustainability concepts and take those away with you. Again, so when you're talking to people, you have some level of credibility. And there are a number of essential tools which may be used to embed sustainability into project management, and I've kind of sent you off to have a look at those in more detail for your assessment. We moved on, we looked at the business case for sustainability, and again, I hope that I managed to kind of get that across to you. One of the things you're looking at is the benefits and the drivers in your essay. And a lot of people are finding there are a lot of drivers. There are a lot of reasons why businesses and projects are looking to incorporate environmental sustainability issues into what they do. And it doesn't matter what those drivers are, whether it's to make more profit, whether it's to comply with legislation, whether it's just a nice warm fuzzy feeling inside. I don't care what motivates you as long as you can do it. When we looked at environmental drivers, social drivers, economic and the legal and legislative drivers which mean we have to do things. So key messages. You guys as project managers, your job is change management essentially. You're changing from one state to another, whether that's from to create a new product, to create a new service, to restructure a service, whatever. You're changing something. Project managers are now being asked to ensure that their projects are sustainable, both in terms of your outputs. So if you're building a building, how can we do that with reduced energy? If you're running a service, how can we do that with less input? But also in terms of how you actually physically run the project. Okay, so not flying all over the country, flying your team in and out to do this and that, and unsustainable use of your physical resources, and you actually run the project. So you need to have an understanding of the drivers for your specific project, because they'll be different. Okay. Organisations increasingly embrace the principles of sustainable development to achieve competitive advantage. So we looked about how some companies use sustainability as a strategic tool to make themselves more profit, to make themselves better. Also looking at new services for socially conscious consumers, increasing the revenue through increased sales, and to attract and retain employees who want to work for a responsible organisation. And there's increasing evidence that people want to work for nice companies. Sounds a bit crazy that, doesn't it? But we do, we want to work with socially responsible companies. So if we can brand ourselves that way, we can do better in recruitment. Some of the benefits, we look at the risks as well, the threat of additional fees or lawsuits for not complying with legislation, threats by not being prepared for climate change impacts, the increased cost of energy and materials, threat to long-term business security, and the viability for organisations that depend on natural resources. So there are a lot of reasons why being a sustainable project manager is good for business, simple as that. About midway through the semester we looked at sustainable project management. I tried to kind of tell you that sustainable project management is perhaps slightly different, perhaps slightly a different mentality, not this usual project start, project end, move on. Trying to think about how the legacy of the project runs, trying to think about how we think slightly differently, away from these closed project terms. We touched on the link between sustainability and quality. Okay, quite often the two can be synonymous. Higher quality can equal higher sustainability. Talked about sustainable project management principles, the types of projects, and also the role of you guys as project managers. When do you need to get involved and when do you not need to get involved? Key messages. Sustainable project management is a response to the realisation that many of our project management frameworks simply do not effectively address these goals: social equity, economic efficiency, and environmental performance. This is changing. When I wrote this slide a couple of years ago, there was absolutely nothing in the project management body of knowledge around sustainable development. Nothing at all. Since then, we've got the 6th edition of the PMI, PMBOK, and 5th edition of the APM, I think it is. It's a big focus now for project managers as professionals. Okay? Quality and sustainability go in hand. Many of the defining concepts of the quality movement can be applied to sustainability. Do you remember I said sustainability is free? That comes from quality is free. The idea that if we improve quality, we improve our processes, we have less waste, less resources, better products, and therefore we have better sales, better profit. The same can be said for sustainability, I would argue. Sustainable project management focuses on continually improving the environmental sustainability of all the resources consumed. And the role of you is to ensure that sustainability is embedded at all points throughout your job as a project manager, for when you're writing down that project on the back of a napkin, all the way through to when you're completing it and having a glass of sustainably, ethically sourced champagne. Sustainable project ideation. I tried to take you through all of the different stages of a project from start to finish, okay? And how can we maybe think about some tools, approaches and techniques for those of you who are still writing your essays? All of you. Some ways of maybe integrating that throughout your planning. So we looked at sustainability and strategic planning. How does it link with an organisation's strategy? Decision-making tools, things like the fishbone diagrams and stuff. Business planning, the project charter, and the project initiation document. Some tools that are common in project management. How can we potentially think about getting more sustainability into those tools? So it's important to remember that projects are conceived by people based on meeting a specific need. So they're not just plucked out of the air for no reason. They're usually there to try to meet an organisation's mission. The decision to undertake a specific project will be influenced by that mission. For this reason, it's vital to understand the role that strategy has in influencing your project and vice versa. So if your organisation has a very strong sustainability strategy, how do you implement through that project? If it doesn't, how do you influence the strategy through your management as a project manager? Companies are becoming increasingly accountable for the impacts of an implement a project on society, environment and economy long after the project has been completed. Seeing a lot of focus on things like the Olympic Park and stuff like that. How do we build a legacy into our mega projects? Did anybody see on the news about the collapse in one of the Brazil 2014 football stadia? Yeah, one of the cranes fell on it and took down half of it and killed a couple of people. Okay, hopefully that place is going to be... all the press is talking about is not the death of 2 people from a construction project, but whether or not the 2014 World Cup will be able to run. Okay, let's get things into perspective here. Okay, so therefore current project management technologies need to be reviewed to ensure alignment with the incorporation of sustainability aspects as well as life cycle management principles. Alignment of your structure with strategy is essential. And I really do think that project managers, if strategically sustainability isn't embedded through your organisation, you can still do it yourself. You are the CEO of your own project as a project manager if you're at the top of your team, okay? You run your team, you run your project as if it's a business itself. So you can influence strategy and you can influence the way the project is run. We looked at sustainable project planning, we looked at the work breakdown structure, resource planning, risk identification. And I always try to say sustainability is simple risk mitigation, okay? Climate change, loss of legislative problems, recruitment and retention, these are all risk issues. So if we can manage risk, we can manage sustainability. We looked at supply chain management, how do we pass that down through all of the people that we work with, and we look at environmental management as a potential way of doing that. So again, some key messages. Proper planning is the most important thing you need to do at the development stage of the project to address any problems that may arise. You need to forecast or backcast, if you remember, where you want to be and try to plan for what you're going to do at every point. Okay? Lack of planning is one of the biggest problems I ever come up against. When did you plan to do your impact assessment? Oh, we didn't plan for it. Okay, well we need to do it now. Well, we haven't got a budget for it. But we need to do it because it's a legislative requirement. We didn't think about it at the time. We haven't got the money, we haven't got the people. You can forecast, you need to plan it very well. It's at the planning stage that good intentions are set and formalised, okay? It's all very good in your head to think, I'm going to have a sustainable project. You need to write that into the plan so every member of staff knows that that is the way you are running this project and that it will happen. You need to plan it into your work breakdown structure in the same way as other project tasks. It needs to have the same priority as financial planning, risk planning, everything else. The risk identification process should also explicitly examine sustainability risks and plan for interventions. I've only recently started seeing projects where they have a line on their risk register that says climate change. Okay, what do we need to plan against that? Well, what's the risks? Flooding. Okay, so how do we mitigate that? You need to think about that, especially if it's a long-term, a large project. And there's also a direct connection between your resources required and the quality of the project. You need to ensure that sustainability is considered through procurement. So can you buy a different kind of paper, a different brand of coffee? Or can you buy a different brand of timber? Can you buy a different material that's going to be better from an environmental point of view? Considering this at the early stage, you can identify where you can actually use better products. One of the outputs of developing the project could be your environmental management plan, which can demonstrate commitment to the environment along with improving your operational efficiency and reducing costs. A very fantastic one that I've seen over the last few years, the best one I've seen in a long time, came from the building of the Tyne Tunnel in North Tyneside, a big tunnel underneath the river, done by the French construction company that I can never say. French people? Is it Bouygues? Bouygues, depending on where you are. They had an environmental management plan, an EMAS scheme for their civil engineering project, and it was fantastic. They thought about everything. It was very transparent. They won the project based on that. They did a lot of consultation. They had a consultation manager actually, who gave all of the people living within a 2-mile radius her mobile phone number. Okay? Any problems, too much noise, any dust, any problems, you phone me on my mobile day or night, I'll answer that problem. That engagement set off so many, offset so many potential problems that we have in construction, especially with the local community complaining again about what's happening. Just by giving them your phone number. She didn't get phone calls day and night, as she said. She got a few, but not too many. She wouldn't give me my phone number, her phone number. Did try. Sustainable project delivery. Okay, what do we do in the middle of the project? We talked about how planning was potentially important, monitoring, control it, but of course the actual execution stage, the time when you actually run the project, is the main time you will spend. Talked about sustainable communication. Can we think of new ways of getting across new technologies, Skype or the etc. Do we still need to actually be in the same room, in the same time, on the same continent as other people? Talked about lean thinking, so maybe some lean project management, some lean design techniques. We looked at project assurance and team and culture, one of my pet projects, pet subjects. So one of the most important factors is successful project management is the timely receipt of distribution of complete and accurate information. I always kind of think as a project manager as a conduit. You're just a conduit for information coming from above and below and from your stakeholders on the side. And it's your job to kind of deal with all of this information coming in, process it, and make things happen, okay? So you spend much of your time not actually physically doing a lot of day-to-day tasks, but more just trying to interpret what is going on. We talked about lean as a way to create more value for customers with fewer resources. Lean organisations understand customer value and focuses on continually increasing it. The ultimate goal is to provide the exact amount of value to your customer with the least amount of resources. So we looked at things like just-in-time production and travel distances for products and things like that. The use of social media, project management software can be used to reduce the need for transportation to meetings and physical copies of every document. Use of online documentation repositories. When it comes to travel, it's not just about the environmental impact and costs, it's also about inconvenience. So security, delayed flights, bad weather, all resulting in more video conferencing. So people are starting to think less about travelling now, not just for environmental reasons, just because it makes sense from a work-life balance. I've got a friend who works for Nestle. He's quite a high up information manager, and his job is to make sure all of the communication and IT systems run perfectly for the whole organisation globally. And he lives next door to me in Tynemouth, up in the northeast coast, and he works in Switzerland. So he commutes every week to Switzerland. He flies out there, he spends 5 days there, and he flies back. Well, he did until recently. He's got a child now. Now he flies out 3 days a week and works from home 2 days a week. From next year, he's going to start working at home constantly. The only time he'll go into the office is if he needs to speak to his team. So we don't physically need to be in the same room as everybody nowadays. We can get ways around it. I think he's also fed of it from me nagging him for flying to Switzerland every week for his carbon footprint. When it comes to travel, social media tools in project management can negate the need for travel, so removing result emissions. Also be the reduction in the use of physical resources such as paper wastes, printing, training, binding, preparing documentation. So using the tools that we already use on day-to-day, you guys are always on Facebook, can we not use those in a work environment as well, or systems like that? Going towards the end now, we touched last week or the week before, monitoring and evaluation. It's all very well having all this planning, but we need to make sure that we actually stop and think and make sure that our project is on course. And again, in my experience, it doesn't happen a lot. We just keep ploughing on as people. We keep working, and only then do we stop and go, oh, it's all gone to shit. We need to stop at the right point, and we need to monitor what's happening so we can make a change if need be. We looked at evaluation, assessment, some of the indicators of how we actually know we're achieving sustainability goals, and we looked at reporting, how we're going to actually tell people that. Sustainability monitoring and the development of a strategy is very important. Evaluating is helpful to provide answers to the questions such as what progress has been made, what outcomes were achieved, a good way of reporting your successes and putting in place plans to stop failure. We need well-planned monitoring mechanisms to assess the structure of sustainability at regular intervals. We need transparency about the sustainability of activities to interest a diverse range of stakeholders. So we need to report, we need to understand that our projects have an impact on a wide range of people in a completely different manner. Project assessment allows managers to assess projects and progress against the indicators. And reporting sustainability in public is the best way to communicate a key element of a corporation's progress. I spend a lot of my time looking at business and project reporting to kind of see what indicators they use and how they write them. I'm looking forward in about 3 to 5 years' time, looking at these with your names on them. I'll remember you. And I want to see your names on these beautiful corporate social responsibility reports for your projects. I'll be watching. Okay, so a couple of last words from Ray Anderson first, and then we've got Holly Knight, who is the Sustainability Project Manager for the Olympic Park last year. They're going to just give you their take on sustainability, what it means for project managers, okay? So all this stuff I'm talking about, we'll see what these guys say. So just a couple of minutes each.
That's a big category of people, project managers, and what is their role in sustainability? Well, it's the role of implementing new strategies. It's the role of making it happen. It's the role of turning ideas and aspirations into reality. And my God, we need it. There's an awful lot of talk. We got a serious deficit in our do-talk ratio. We need a whole lot more do, maybe not quite so much talk. And of course, all that translates into an immense amount of greenwash. So that's what we don't need. We don't need false statements in the marketplace claiming things that aren't true, or claiming sustainability when today there's no such thing as sustainability. None of us is close enough to zero footprint to say we're sustainable. That is, if you take my definition of zero footprint as the definition of sustainability, I would say it is incredibly important to get it right. And that means understanding what you're doing and why you're doing it. That probably means an awful lot of reading to gain a very clear vision of what this is all about. Even before that, it means talking to your customers too, because there's got to be an acceptance at the other end of the supply chain, of what's coming through the supply chain in terms of less unsustainable products. So knowing your business is, like any other walk of life, knowing your business is absolutely paramount. And that means in depth. It doesn't mean a mile wide and an inch deep. It means, really in depth understanding what sustainability really and truly is. And when you aspire, to zero footprint, that's an aspiration that takes the breath away. How do you do that? Well, we got to come to grips with how you do that. So you look for examples of other companies, other people who are literally doing it with a great big do-talk ratio.
Okay, so that's the CEO's view on what project managers need to do. You need to read more, apparently. Just what you wanted to hear, isn't it? Okay. Some CEOs think that it's important and we need to deal with it. And then we've got Holly Knight, who is was the sustainability manager for the London Olympics and is now working on the Rio Olympics. And she gives a view to the Association for Project Management of where she sees project managers for sustainability.
My key messages at the APM conference today were around sustainability. It's really important to have a clear strategy from the outset, to make sure that you have processes in place that ensures that everyone is delivering in the same way and that people know how they should deliver against those targets. But most importantly, to know what the end goal is, and that sustainability isn't just about targets. The end goal might be more related to the community and what you're providing, and to ensure that people are aware of what that end goal is. I would like people to go away from my presentation today thinking that sustainability is actually a key part of project managers' responsibility, because whilst you have sustainability professionals working on a project, and in the past they've been a separate group of people, I think in order to deliver real sustainability, it's up to the project manager to embrace it. It's also about learning what the same language is to talk, so finding a common language for both environmental professionals and project managers and engineers, architects, even between architects and engineers, finding a common language to work collaboratively.
So for Holly it's about strategy and procedure, but also about communities and about project managers actually taking the responsibility. So yeah, we do have environmental consultants. I'll give you my business card afterwards. You can hire me if you want on your projects. But it's more important for you to actually have the understanding yourself than to try to buy in expertise, although you need to when you need it, okay? So that was some project managers' view on sustainability. It's not just me that's saying this. A lot of people are starting to think that this is what's important. And my final thought, remember this one? What if all of this is a big hoax? What if this climate change is just rubbish? What if all this sustainability stuff is just nonsense that I'm talking about? What we're gonna end up with? Actually, we're gonna have better energy independence, yeah? Okay, maybe. But we're gonna have the rainforest still. We're gonna have green jobs, livable cities, clean air, healthy children. So we're not doing this for nothing, okay? You don't have to believe in climate change. You don't have to believe in all the stuff we talked about. It's just a good, sensible thing to do anyway, okay? Acting in a more sustainable manner. That was my last thought. Okay, so that's the end of the programme. One more thing to do before we go though, if I can. What I'm going to do in the seminars, I've got a lot of people still asking me questions about the assessment. Can I come and see you? The answer is no. No, it's not. I do have some problems at the moment. I don't have any space at the moment. I'm completely blocked out with undergraduate teaching. So what I've decided to do is the final seminars, which is going to take place today, tomorrow and Wednesday, we'll still use those as assessment surgeries, okay? So there'll be no formal seminar, we'll have a drop-in sessions, okay? So if you want to come and talk about the assessment, fantastic. If you've finished, you've handed it in, you're happy about it, go and grab a coffee, whatever you want to do, okay? So the seminars are for the assessment surgeries. And finally, one more thing to do, if I can work out how to use this. Bear with me. Okay, so after, before, during, when you submit your assessment, please have a look at this here, module evaluation. I would very, very much appreciate you in a very good sustainable project manager fashion to help me monitor the sustainability of this this module. So if you could please take the time, I'll send you an email as well, to click on that link and fill in the questionnaire. I don't make you do it on paper because that's so 1980s. You can do it actually online. Take you a couple of minutes. Give me some feedback, please. It's anonymous, unless you want to put your name down. There's no prize though. Please give me some feedback, whether you think this was useful, anything we can improve, anything can be better for next year. But I do value that, so please do that. Other than that, I'll see you in the assessments. Good luck. I'll see you in the seminars. Good luck with your assessment, and have a nice Christmas. You know, Christmas in the UK starts 6 weeks before Christmas. Yeah, you pass. Project manager's already sustainable because your job is